Number 9, what was another role they did? Built schools. Built schools. Built schools. A good number of schools were built in East Africa. Rabai was the first. Rabai Mpia. Talk of many other in East Africa. Then go the Mango schools, Kisubia, and so on. But what was the importance of the schools? This was an area of indoctrination. What does the word indoctrinate mean? These were areas of indoctrination where colonial ideas were imparted into the heads of the young people of East Africa. And when they imparted those ideas into their brain, they began loving the Europeans. They never saw any problem with the Europeans. And apart from that, these are the same people who later worked as colonial administrators, clerks, for example. Clerks, talk of interpreters, blah, 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 blah. So the teaching alone gave the colonialists a go ahead. Another, built health centers. Built health centers. And how does that one aid colonization? This is the reduced the risk of diseases. That it reduced the risk of diseases. And who was risking? It is the colonialists that we are going to risk. If they had come in a vulnerable area, they would get infected. But of course, these men had already put in place a remedy by building health centers, which health centers helped and reduced on the risk of diseases by colonialists. Number 11 is to do with the campaigns that promoted developed our culture that we saw, encouraging of foreign languages, yes. Encouraged foreign languages. How did this one help? Encouraging of foreign languages, e.g. English. How was that one going to help in the colonization? It was going to reduce on language barrier. Yes, language barrier. Language barrier was going to be reduced, and as language barrier was reduced, colonization work progressed. Another, the areas of scramble. They turned subjects, they scrambled for areas with mineral resources. Yes. Scrambled for areas with resources. Scrambled for areas with resources. And what does this one mean? It was attracting their home country to come and occupy such what? Areas. Number 13. Finance colonial agency. Very good. Financed colonial agents. Example, Ibeco, or the Imperial British East African Company, which was financed by the CMS. It is the CMS that financed it, the Church Mission Society. Of course, one of the major problems faced by chartered companies, as you shall see, was the bankruptcy. But before they could become bankrupt, they were given a boost by the CMS to operate for at least 1 more year. That's why by 1893 there was no more. Yes, they gave them more funding for 1 year. Another, what did they do? They turned subjects against their kings. Yes, turned subjects against their kings. How did this one benefit the colonials? Of course, this one led to loss of power. This one led to loss of power of the kings. So after the kings lost power, it created a vacuum. It created a vacuum for the colonials to come and occupy, because the talking of the European missions against the kings was enough. For example, is here in Uganda during the time of Kabaka Mwanga. Yes, who was overthrown by the missionaries themselves. Number 15. What was another role? Another role is participating in the religious wars. Participated in religious wars. Religious wars. That was in Uganda. Participated in religious wars in Uganda, and that was between 1885 to 1900. That was the period of religious wars in Uganda. And how does this one aid the colonization? We are aware that after the wars that were fought between the Catholics, Protestants, Muslims, and traditionalists, the end justified the coming of the what? Of the European colonists. They were supported, by the way, by some of them, like Captain Frederick Lugar, who supported the Protestants in these wars. But the most important is, how did the end justify the what? The coming of colonials. It is for example, realize that by the end of the wars, an agreement was signed. That was 1900 Buganda Agreement, which I told you already acted as a bridge between the European and the British and the Baganda. So the end of the wars and the signing of 1900 Buganda Agreement was enough to bring colonization in Buganda and Uganda in general. Why? Because it is from the signing of the agreement of 1900 that it marked a foundation for the extension of colonial rule in other parts of the world, of the country. So with that, we also come to the end of the role played by the roles played by the missionaries in colonization. That is agency number 2. Now we are going to agency number 3. We are going to agency number 3, and that is the chartered companies or the traders. So with that, we shall have exhausted the various colonial agencies. Agency number 3 is the traders or chartered companies. And of course, we shall begin by defining them. And as usual, we define them as European groups that were given charters, those that had been given charters or licenses to operate, those that have been given charters or licenses to operate on behalf of their respective home governments. Yes. And of course, examples we have the Imperial British East African Company, yes, and Sir William Mackinnon, that is one. We also have the German East African Company, the ones they abbreviate as GECO, and Dr. Carl Peters, whereas under the Ibeco Steel we had Captain Frederick Lugard, but who was more of the military wing of Iberia. This one was more of military wing of Iberia. That's why you will see that rank or title of captain. He was captain of the army and not captain of a football club. So you can see Captain Fred Lugard was more on the military wing. But much as he was on the military, he was also in administration. He was also in admin, because we saw him championing the indirect rule. He was the champion of indirect rule in many British colonial possessions. Wherever it was, in India he had been there, in West Africa, in Nigeria he had been there. So you can see he was the champion of indirect rule in his book, which was called the dual mandate. So that's how he acted as an administrator. So these are the agencies. Dr. Carl Peters, we shall see him. We have seen him in Tanganyika, where he was very much instrumental, and during the time of company rule. So briefly, we can see that background. And of course, this one had been formed in 1884. Yes, as 1884, whereas this one had been formed as 1888. And of course, this one, the German East African Company, was from the German Colonization Society or German Colonial Missions, and whereas this one from the British East African Association, BEAA. It was from the British East African Association, whereas GECO was from the German Colonization Society. And that is enough background on these trading companies, which can form part of your introduction, if you want to put it like that. So, after that preamble on the chartered companies or traders, we now have to go and look at their roles, because that's what we are on for. We are after today. We are also going to look at their roles in the colonization. Roles. Chartered companies. Roles played by chartered companies. Number one, what are the roles? Roles were there. Yes, they are here. Role number one, promoted legitimate trade. Promoted legitimate trade. That's number one. How do they promote it? By, of course, establishment of farms, and of course, these are the farms that boosted the legitimate trade. Of course, this was trade in material goods and not in human beings. We're establishing farms and many other economic avenues related to promotion of legitimate trade, which the colonialists were in favor of and which was against slave trade. Number two, another role played by the chartered companies, stopped slave trade. These are the people who stopped. Missionaries did not stop slave trade. They campaigned. And it is the traders that stopped slave trade. Why did they stop? Because they were promoting another more legal trade, and which was going to benefit the colonialists, which is legitimate trade, which was promoting colonization. Stop slave trade, and by stopping it, gave boost to legitimate trade of the colonialists. That's number 1, 2, 3. Promoted agriculture, which colonial economy thrived on. Yes, promoted agric, and by promoting agriculture, we are saying it is the basis of colonial. It was the basis of colonial economy. So without